I think Murtala, if he was a socialist, might have been in the infancy.
Wetin come?
Because he didn't. How many months did this?
Because you know say he gets ideology wey they call Ramatism in the 70s.
Yes, by the way, totally. And I wanted to talk about this. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Today, we decided that we'd discuss the movie 76, which we all agreed would be maybe a fun alternative way to approach the question of the Nigerian scam. Turner will kindly provide the introduction to the film, but we actually had recorded a previous episode on this, but because somebody, and I won't say who, didn't hit record, we're now actually coming back to retake it again. So hopefully this is nice
no snitches here.
as the first time. Yeah. The film is now, I think, available on Netflix. And then, if you can't watch it on Netflix, I'm sure you can find another way to watch it. You know what I'm saying. I mean, there'll be some spoilers in the show probably, but we'll try not to ruin it entirely. So, Tanner, the floor is yours.
Okay, so basically 76 follows a young military officer and his wife as they navigate the trials of being accused of being part of the 1976 coup and assassination of General Murtala Muhammed. I believe it follows two tracks. One track is the young soldier himself, Joseph Dewa.
Played by Ramsey Noah,
exactly.
Right?
And his wife is Susie, played by Rita Dominic. She does a fantastic job, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just follows both their personal lives, the stresses of being married to a military officer with all that comes with that, constant postings and just not being steady-footed in your community. And then on his part, trying to navigate the politics of being the leadership or command structure while being implicated in the coup attempt.
Okay, that's pretty solid.
For those of you that are interested, it's directed by Izu Ojukwu.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's pretty solid. Nice one. You didn't even spoil the script for folks who haven't watched. We are brought into the plot as Dewa himself is pulled into plans by some of his colleagues to conduct this coup. And that's the kind of first act of the movie. And then in the second act, after Dewa has been captured, spoiler, the movie primarily focuses on Susie, his wife, and how she navigates trying to prove her husband's innocence. Through kind of, doing what she can within the context of the barracks and within the context of growing paranoia amongst the military ranks about who was involved, who was not involved. I guess that more or less covers the main kind of script without trying to spoil too much, right?
Yeah, I will say we're going to be deconstructing you guys are going to be deconstructing part of the events leading up to the coup, and their representation of the time period and all of that. So I don't know how successful we're going to be at not spoiling the film, but we'll make the attempt.
Yeah, go and watch it. If you anyway. So totally.
This is the point where YouTubers will say, pause this movie, go and watch it, and then come back, right? Or she did not pause.
I guess, yeah. maybe do that.
They
No, but
should-
okay,
they
cool. I
they
mean,
should
I
go-
guess we,
go
I
and
guess,
see
I
it.
guess fine. So that covers more or less the script. But then, how did you? I haven't watched it. Having paused, gone and watched it, and come back. How do you guys feel about the film, just in general terms, before we get into the detail? Like as a film, as an experience, how was watching it? Emeka, you seem like you're really, really keen now, having ingested that semo in 15 minutes. You seem like you're really keen to talk about it. So do you want to take a first stab?
My food day inside nylon where they use deliver am. About chop.
Okay. So yeah, maybe sharp, and then mute your computer so you can start to ingest handfuls of steaming stemmo.
I don't know. I enjoyed the movie. I mean, that the historical slant to it, you know, and I think for me, what I took away most from the movie was the fact that part of the story that they tried to tell was, you know, maybe not even explicitly, maybe just even suggests it, is that there's a time when in this country when you'd be hounded for being a communist or being a socialist, you know, if you like. And then I think what the movie suggests, or tries to suggest, is that the reason why the Murtala himself, you know, or why there was a coup against the Murtala government was because he had communist sentiments, which you can make an argument for, but to say that Murtala was a communist, you know, I think would be a stretch. I'm not saying, you know, that the movie, you know, goes that far, but yeah, I think that's the part that resonates with me.
Definitely. Yeah, and we'll definitely come back to that part because I think that's the center of the film. But just in terms of its delivery and like its quality and whether you watch it again and that sort of thing, like, you know, what do you guys think?
I'll definitely see it again.
Would you watch it again?
Yeah, I think it's very different from, you know, the mainstream type of crap that we have circulating on Nollywood screens now. You know, it's something different.
Do you want to call particular names of films?
No, I don't think I'll do that. But that's, you know, but I know you know what I'm talking about. You know, he knows how to fear, but
Okay.
let's just leave it to the people to decipher. You know,
Okay.
and then of course it's something that kind of takes us on a historical journey to see the happenings of that time, and then of course help us understand what the military was like, what Nigeria was like at the point in time, and then, you know, the forces at play in our country, and, you know, I'd even say the ones that are still shaping the country at the moment. You know, so it's a really creative attempt at bringing all this to the forefront. So you know, it's something I'd watch again and then try to digest even further. You know, but it wasn't a bad movie at all.
Nice. Okay, so far some good reviews. I mean, Turner, let me bring you from the backdrop where you're pulling strings and doing some Jagaban things to the foreground. So yeah, I mean, what's your own take? Because I know last time we were recording, you brought in some kind of technical jargon to explain why it was whack. So yeah, I mean, what?
No, come on. I mean, I thought it was beautifully shot. I thought the movie was fantastically shot.
So you rate the cinematography?
I rate the cinematography. I rate the choice of music. I rate the set design and the costume. It was fantastic. Like, I have never seen a period, and it's a stretch to call this a period piece, but it is set in a particular period, and it is internally consistent in its depiction of the time period of the 70s in Nigeria. From everything from the hair, the clothing, the type of material, the cars that were used, even the license plates. I think I mentioned that the last time. Even the license plates were very on point. The choice of music I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was period specific. Also, a lot of the music was from that era. There is even a scene where they have this live band at a club playing,
Oh yeah, that
and
was nice.
it was just it was it,
That
it, it really did feel
yeah.
like I was watching, guys in the 70s just hang out and be,
Yeah. That was nice. I
yeah.
think that club scene was like exceptional to
The
me.
the only thing is, I think I mentioned this again, the ADR, which is sort of whenever you make a movie, you kind of have to go. For those that don't know, after recording during the filming, you go back into the studio and record all your lines again. It's very tedious, and the goal is to get clean audio so that you can match to the scene. Um, and in
Yeah,
parts of
yeah,
the
yeah.
movie, the ADR was very bad, and by that I mean you could tell that the voices that were coming out of their mouths were not recorded in that space. At any point in time, there are all kinds of sounds that are, in and around any room. There is echoes, there is slight noise from
Yeah.
the fan, all those things. But when you hear audio recorded in the studio, it is clean. There is no noise, no
Yeah.
artifacts, nothing of the atmosphere. And there were a lot of parts that was the case. And then there are parts where the
Right.
music was much louder than the audio, so it was difficult to tell what they were saying. Um,
Nice.
so that
Yeah.
that
So
really is my main complaint.
okay.
There were scenes that I thought were superfluous, but on a second watch, I think maybe I'm more okay with those scenes, even as I
Oh,
think that
interesting.
the script could have been a lot tighter. I don't think it needed to be as long as it was, but that
Yeah.
is just a personal feeling of mine. I don't know if I have a very strong
No fair.
argument for why it should be shorter. Um,
No fair. ADR. I mean, the listeners can't say we're not teaching them stuff. Obviously we all know what that means because we're smart. But
Obviously.
but no, that's nice. Yeah, but okay. So what scenes did you think were superfluous? Sorry, before we get into the
That's what
content.
I'm saying now. I don't know. It just felt
Okay. You don't
long.
wanna.
I watched the
Yeah.
movie and I had to break it in two. It's not a long movie, like time
Yeah.
wise. It's not a long movie. I guess what I would say is the pacing of it
Yeah.
did not
Yeah.
hold my attention
No,
throughout.
fine.
Yeah.
No, fine. Like, so I agree. I mean, generally, it sounds like we all kind of agree that like this for Nollywood felt pretty darn good. I guess, right? Like,
Yes.
it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The focus, the topic particularly, but also to some extent the execution in terms of like cinematography and some of the set design. Though yeah, the sound is clearly off. I mean, um, I was also not impressed by some of the acting, to be honest. Like, you know, I think that you were saying at the start, Rita Dominic was excellent.
Yes.
Honestly, Rita Dominic is like a world class actress. I think she can go pound for pound in anyone. But man, like Ramsey Noah for me, and people will say he's hating. I think Ramsey Noah is a great looking guy, but I think he's a terrible actor. I mean,
I wouldn't go
yeah,
so
I
far as
just
to say he's a terrible actor. I think he was pretty good in this. I found him
look.
convincing.
I'm being nice. I think that dude is dog shit when it comes to acting. That's-
Uh, no, I found him
I
convincing in parts.
He didn't do badly anyway. So he
honestly,
didn't do badly. It
yeah. I
wasn't
mean, I
bad,
think he looked great in the uniform. I would have a beer with him, but like anyway, what I think we probably all agreed was the central scene, which was the scene right after the club and after Dewa and Susie go to the movies, which I thought was cute. They had like, I think this is something like that comes up in a lot of Hollywood films, and it's like a nice effect where like you're watching people in a film watch a film. So I'm like, oh, these guys, they're playing with interesting stuff. And then they, after that, Dewa goes to a meeting where he has to present a code name in order to enter the meeting. And Gomos basically is, at this point, openly inviting Dewa to join the coup, right? Gomos is like, this guy is ruining our country, our traditions.
I'm not surprised that you rise up in defense of this regime. This government that has abandoned our tradition and ideologies and aligned itself with the communists.
Sponsoring the MPLA Angolan army against the unit of rebels does not turn our country into a communist state, Gomos. Is it not sad that many of your kind will allow themselves to be used to turn Africa into a theater of war? Is it not sad?
I need your ID card.
We were all struck, I mean, I was struck, and it sounds like other people were as well, by the rationale for the coup. Because, you know, when you hear about the Murtala coup, classically, you know, it's framed in the normal way in which Nigerian coups are framed, like one ethnic bloc trying to overseat another ethnic bloc. And so, as usual, Nigerian politics is just about competition amongst various ethnic blocs. But within this film, you know, in that conversation, the coup is kind of resignified, right? Because, so like, I found that really striking for various reasons, right? And I guess the rest of you did. So do we want to just reflect on that? I mean, OAG, I mean, I suspect you want to say a couple of things on that. What was your take when you saw that? And like, how does that resonate with you?
Well, because I have the report of the investigation of that coup, and then the first thing on the confession, whatever list was that, the Dimka and them claimed that the Nigerian government was going communist.
Right.
However, you know,
right.
Yeah,
so
that's like
even in the documented report, like leaving films aside, even in real life, like
in real life,
thing was part of the motivation.
There's a military, there's a military report, you know, and of course, Murtala was allowing or was lending support to the MPLA movement, you know, which was essentially supported by Cuba to, and you know, fighting for liberation and all that, you know. So, but we have to look at this aspect, you know, that our Nigerian army essentially is birthed or got its life from the crucibles of imperialism. Like, these people are soldiers that have been trained in the United States, that have been indoctrinated by United States right-wing thinking and all that, you know. So when you ask most of these people what communism is, they really just find themselves regurgitating what the West or what right-wing think tanks have been saying, or maybe essentially the United States government, you know, because if a country is fighting for its own liberation and you're joining to unseat imperialists from that country, then it's actually something that is good, that should be supported, you know. But what you have is the army being proliferated by anti-communist tendencies and anti-communist sentiments, you know. Where is this coming from? You know, and then you see that there's also a tussle, because Murtala himself, you know, from my own research, is not or wasn't a communist, at, you know, at that point in time. He might have just been, you know, developing a new form of consciousness. And like I read somewhere else, is that Basil Davidson came to educate him as to the necessities of you know, helping MPLA, you know, because the imperialists were trying to take over Angola for the crude oil that, you know, Angola possesses, you know, that kind of thing. And then the nationalism, the African, you know, nationalism, and then the dictatorship of the West were just emerging from colonialism. This sentiment is really, really crucial to see that the army too was in the cross currents of the Cold War. And any form of nationalist tendencies or nationalist action will be seen by the imperialists, by the West essentially, as leaning towards the communist bloc, you know, and they couldn't afford that, you know. So, and there are some CIA documents that, you know, show that Gowon and all these guys knew about the coup. And even the United States agencies, CIA, all of them, like, they can't say they didn't know about this, you know. So, we say Murtala was, you know, a victim of the Cold War era just by lending support to the legitimate people that are supposed to take power in Angola, you know. So these are the questions that must be asked, and then we must also try to understand and go deeply, into what communism is, what socialism is, and all that, because it just makes it okay. Because the socialist, then well, you can kill him.
No, that's
shouldn't
what I
kill
thought
him,
was really interesting about that scene. And by the way, OAG, you're hilarious, man. I love how you kept all the receipts. OAG is like OAG is like referencing all these documents, which you should share.
Yeah.
But anyway, totally, man. I think that's what made that scene very interesting. Is that it wasn't that they were disagreeing about whether or not a communist should be killed. I think they both agreed. They were like, look, there was a certain implicit agreement where it was like, okay, if he's a communist,
bad.
Then that's an issue. But one was like, he's a communist, so we should kill him. And the other one is like, no, he's not necessarily a communist, so we should, he probably isn't a communist. So we shouldn't. So we probably shouldn't kill him. So no, it really illustrates the point you're driving at. But I mean, I was just shocked by the fact that, like, ideology seemed to be central in the conversation about whether or not to carry out the coup, over and against questions like religion or ethnicity, which are often obviously framed as like the main driving forces of political developments in Nigeria. And for a Nollywood film to capture that, like for me, that was like, wow, okay, this guy's tried.
Yeah. It's something different, like I remarked earlier on. Like, the script is a bit deep.
Yeah. But Emeka, I don't know if you're still on. I mean, is there anything you want to add just on that scene and like the treatment of that subject in the film?
I don't know. I think you guys have. I think you've exhausted much of what there is to say about it. But it's just to add that I think that perhaps people don't quite understand, the 70s, and this is just from me reading. I'm not in Tena's league here. He seems to have been born in that time. I mean, so he knows.
What? Tena was born in the 70s?
OG, bro.
I kept hearing him define the 70s.
I'm not your age mate.
I kept hearing him paint pictures of the 70s. So I was wondering to myself.
The drivers, it's true.
I mean, if you love music, the 70s were a profound time in the music industry. And I know the 70s
definitely
primarily through music as opposed to any
other thing. I agree.
No, I was wondering.
And I said this in the other episode. It's not only music, it was also ideology in Africa. Like the MPLA, which we're going to talk about, had taken power in Angola. There was like within the same time period, the Ethiopian revolution happening. There was like Cabral, fighting against the Portuguese in Cape Verde. OG is standing up and saluting.
That's how I'm doing that.
So yeah, man. And then, of course, even in Nigeria, we think about the 70s as like a kind of time of some level of social upheaval after the war. Like there was Reconstruction, there was like afros and bell bottoms, there was like a little bit of liberalism springing up, but there was also, like people challenging the status quo, people like Fela, but a host of other people outside of Fela. So I'm stealing Emeka's point really, but
yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, if you ask me, even perhaps as a sequel to 76, I think there should be a movie called 78 as well, which would probably map the student union movement in Nigeria, and the
trademark,
the radicalization. I mean, it would be set perhaps predominantly on a campus this time, and then the influence of radical lecturers in that regard. But I mean,
that's very essential.
If I think, I mean, I don't have the dates to hand, but if I remember, I think that Murtala was killed on February 13, 1976, or assassinated. If you dig deep into history, you would find that perhaps throughout the 70s, from 71 all the way to 79. It's probable. I mean, I think Said will agree with this. That's when the Nigerian left had some of its best moments. From pushing for indigenization, Um,
Yeah.
by 77, they were already
No,
having the
yeah.
all Nigerian Socialist or Marxist conference in Kaduna or Kanu. By the next year, there was a second one. Yeah, I mean, it was a fine time. I mean, and that's when you
I
know
think Kaduna.
people like Obasanjo started to hit down hard on lecturers in the university, saying that that they are teaching what they were not paid to teach, and that and then even certain liberal-minded or conservative-minded academics started to say that their colleagues who were teaching weren't teaching, that they were teaching ideology. And it's sometimes, I mean, maybe this is nostalgia. Well, not nostalgia. I didn't
Yeah.
yeah, but it's the way it seems to me. It's it it it
No,
70s reeked of
100%.
possibilities. And to find that a movie captures the essence of that time. For me, it's within the military is great. I mean, we can also make conversations
Yeah.
about what was the rationale. I heard OAG talk about the CIA document, which I think is declassified now, which he shared with me one time. And but what was the international politics like? Which people were?
Yeah. I sound.
What was the role of big capital? What interests were these military guys who thought that Murtala had turned socialist? Whose interests were they trying to protect? I mean, those are some of the hints that perhaps the movie could have dropped, made it a bit more tighter in that sense. But generally, it's just a good feel to see that
Yeah.
we're getting to see movies that depict an era in its in its true form. Yeah.
Yeah. Emeka, I totally agree. I totally agree with you that, man, like that era has not been explored enough. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in terms of what was happening in the 70s. And we've raised the question of the student movement before, and of radical lecturers, and of like the military leader at the time, I guess Obasanjo, saying that these lecturers were teaching what they were not supposed to teach, or paying, what is it called, like teaching what they weren't paid to teach. In effect, talking about like Marxist study groups after hours, you know. And it was also the time period when Nigeria returned to democracy in 79, briefly, in what's called the Second Republic, there were actually socialist political parties that took power in local areas, in the state government elections in Kaduna and Kano, and like the UPN, the party in the Southwest, also like some of its governors and a lot of its members were overtly Marxist. So there was something in the air in that time period for sure, both internationally and certainly locally. And I think there's like quite a story to tell there that hasn't been told effectively yet.
Yeah, not to stray too far from the movie. I think that there's this aspect of the movie that perhaps gets lost in translation, and that's the part that depicts the lives of the military wives in barracks, and then what they have to go through, when
Fantastic. Yes, that is so true.
when you have coups, and I mean, that's very well captured in the exchange between the character that Rita Dominic plays and this other woman who I can't quite remember her name, some older woman who had come to her aid, once or twice. But I think that that's something that ought to be,
Mama something, I forgot her name too.
yeah, that ought to be fleshed out. People talk about the coups, in terms of history, but nobody then talks about, how the women of military wives of military officers, handle it. Even like there was neighbor who was a part of the coup and had this really funky woke wife, and how she got booted out of the barracks, at the end of and so that's the conversation. I mean, it's also there in the larger society.
Did you say she was woke?
How the wives of policemen, soldiers get kicked out of the barracks when they lose their husbands. So that's something that we might want to also take a stab at.
Oh shit! I think we lost him. Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. You're audible. I
Nice.
can hear you.
No, man. He was making such a solid.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, you were making such a solid point, and then you dropped out. And it's a point we thrashed quite a bit in the episode that ultimately, we couldn't use. But I mean, you're totally right. Again, like I think that was such a brilliant aspect of the show, of the movie rather, is that it went into the lives of military wives, right? And like you would, the point you're making about the effects of these coups on them is a very interesting point. But I also think that there's an extent. Okay, but maybe I should phrase it as a question. Don't you think that there's an extent to which the movie portrayed her, that's Dewa's wife Susie, as a bit too much of a victim, rather than an agent? Because I mean, the military wives that I've come to understand through history, through reading a bit of history, were like hardly passive in the political events that took place in the barracks and therefore in the country more generally. And it's kind of odd to me also that like we never even find out what her last name is. Like it's just Susie, which maybe it's a throwaway point, but I mean there's an extent maybe to which like she's kind of transformed into a passive political actor whose only real like motivating force is trying to save her man. I mean, is that unfair?
It's not. I don't think it's unfair. This is a much more deeper critique of the movie. But what I have to ask ourselves is, what did the producer or the script writer set out to do?
Yeah.
And then what level of consciousness are they writing the script from? Because definitely most of the military wives aren't passive, or they're not just onlookers or standing by people when their husbands or
Right.
fiancé or loved ones,
Like,
going to cool activities. Of course,
I'm just like, the men can talk about lofty issues like communism, but then the woman is like, oh, okay, what are we gonna cook? And like, oh, is my husband gonna be okay?
I'm even saying, aside the ideological, let's even take out the ideological aspect in terms of maybe communism and all that, but the aspect of knowing about the coup, suspecting that the husband, goes for meetings late at night, or maybe abroad, traveling here and there, that kind of thing, secrecy,
Right.
and all this kind of thing. So these are, they're
And also
hardly passive
presumably
when it
like
comes to things
having
this.
having also like ambitions and having political perspectives, some of which are sometimes aligned.
Exactly.
So there are, there
Exactly.
are definitely military wives, people like, what's it called, Babangida's wife, who had, like started
Miriam.
this, exactly, Miriam Babangida, right? As one, of course, archetypal military wife in the history of Nigeria that was exercising a lot of influence. But I mean, that's just one example, and there are others, right? Of like wives, Abacha's wife being another example. Like exercising influence, like pulling strings, like making suggestions, like not just sitting in the background, but actually actively shaping events.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
I don't know whether I agree. I don't know whether I agree with what's being said here. I think that perhaps we first need to account for, Dewa's own rank, within the military. Was he?
Okay.
Of course, he wasn't rank and file, but was he elite of top of the brass? I wouldn't say so. Don't forget that the role in which she was cast was one where she, the subplot was one that, kind of suggested or showed that, she was having running battles with her own family because she decided to get hooked with, Ramsey. I think that gives her some kind of agency, there somewhere where she can stand her ground,
Definitely.
Again. So I think that at the time, that movie also was set to talk about intertribe marriages, and that's where she draws her own strength from, and that she had to battle that, as well as a husband who was trying to be framed for something that he had no idea about, that he walked out on when he found out. I think it's a bit of a stretch. I think that within character,
this is the point.
Yeah, I think that within character she had some agency, and what she did with that was that she had asked around and found out what it was, that the problem was, and it was with her conversation with this other older woman who I don't remember, which is sad. That she then found out that if I don't know if that's how she found out, but she kind of caught wind of the fact that the guy's ID could save him, and don't forget that there was a lot done to try and steal that ID, and then she took it and put it in her bag, and that's how it came to be that he was saved. And another really moving scene in that movie, it's one that is historical in its in the way that it's depicted. The hard fact that she had to leave Ibadan, where the movie is set, the barracks in Ibadan, one of the barracks in Ibadan, to go to the bar beach in Lagos. Just to So and yeah, so there's a lot that she has to go through within the role that she plays. That break in communication where she doesn't even know whether the guy is alive or not, and nobody's talking to her. So I mean, it's just it just tells you how bad things can be for wives of military men when shit hits the fan, really.
No, yeah.
Our own point was kind of hypothetical, like, okay, we of course understand that there's a domestic aspect and what she had to go through, of course, the intertribal marriage thing and all that, but we're just saying generally, like, most times you have the military ladies or wives of officers being portrayed in a very passive manner.
Yeah.
And then, but for the movie, what she was going through was really, really serious and all, so which we appreciated, and how she played it out and acted the role, but we're saying in real life now, we can't say that the wives of military men won't have a whiff of what their husbands, are trying to do, or not. So that's just the point, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess the truth is somewhere between.
I don't agree that when a military coup is being orchestrated, that wives of military men know anything about it. I don't agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Emeka, look, this point, it's gonna be hard to prove it either way, right? Because we're not there. But I just, I of course, I was raised by a military wife. I mean, we can all bring our personal perspectives to the table to some extent, I guess. And there's just a lot more that goes on, basically. And of course, the film, I'm still going to give kudos to the film as you're trying to do. Like, I appreciate where you're coming from, and I agree with you that actually the portrayal was complex. The fact that half of the film is actually about what she's trying to do is worth noting. But I'm just saying that, from hearing how my mom was discussing politics growing up, and just from being aware of, some of the, again, Miriam Abacha, other, senior army officers' wives, from seeing how they operated in the public sphere, I think removing her political agency, or just not showing her expressing political perspectives, probably limited the kinds of topics, kinds of themes that the movie could have gone into. I don't know why I keep saying the show. That the movie could have explored. So that's where I would agree with OG.
This is where I started off with. What is the scriptwriter trying to portray, and what level of consciousness are they writing it from, and what are the things that they're trying to sensitize us to? So that's it. Of course, I'm sure if the person that's reading the script checks it out, they'll be cool with what they've written, but we are just critiquing from various angles. So it's all good,
Yeah. I mean, Emeka, I'm hearing you, and I again, I buy that. But there's an extent to which you can say that Nollywood films often raise the question of inter-ethnic marriages and how women have to decide between their husband's family and their own previous family, and like, childbirth, marriages that don't have children, like having a child before you're married. Like these kinds of questions seem like the classic Nollywood question. So maybe there's a sense in which the film goes in that direction ultimately because it's trying to satisfy the classic appetite, right?
Okay.
But I'm just saying, going in that direction, even if like it doesn't completely denude her of agency, like it does miss out on the opportunity to delve into a much richer political and historical question that has had quite a dramatic impact on Nigerian history, being that of army officers' wives. Do you see where we're coming from, kind of?
I don't see where you guys are going to, honestly, to be honest. I mean, I see.
Whatever, man.
I see, really, but
You know what?
I see, I agree.
You know what?
But
It's
I
really-
think, hold on. I think that what we're missing, or what I think is that I assume, and I might be wrong, I assume that this intertribal marriage was between Dewa, who is from southwestern Nigeria, and hello.
You're
Yeah,
audible.
Hey,
so I
man,
think-
sorry, you
yes.
cut out for a bit, but keep going.
Yeah, so I think that this is a marriage between somebody who is from the west in Nigeria, say Yoruba, and an Igbo girl, right? The context here is that this is happening 6 years after the end of the Civil War or thereabout. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's perhaps because these days we can. So maybe because we can take it for granted these days, and that's why we forget that what the movie is saying is that it was a big deal, for an Igbo girl to get married to a Yoruba guy in 1976, in ways that is not so much of a big deal today, really. Yeah. So I mean, that's the point that I am trying to make.
Yeah, like this is what I keep saying, that it all depends. Like I won't say like the women that are married to military officers are not entirely or are not active, but the movie could have done better, and I would say if we have like a really functional, maybe feminist standpoint that can delve into the lives of these women and see what kind of power they wield or how they, influence things. It'll be nice to just see, but we're not taking anything out of the movie because we have to understand once again where the writer is coming from. We can't change the movie or what it is. It's already set. We're just saying it would have been nicer or in our own context to see, okay, what kind of agency or power does, the average military wife, have or run in the house. Yeah. So that's all. It's not.
Emeka is saying that he does not want to know how military wives influence politics. Like he's just not interested.
Oh well.
No, I'm being unfair.
I'm sure Miriam,
Yeah.
Miriam, Babangida and all that.
I
At
know.
least they kind of had a hand in the cause of the country.
Definitely. It wasn't Miriam Abacha who said,
Yeah.
like, no matter how much money, no matter how much of the Abacha loot is recovered, we will never be as poor as Dangote.
Ooh.
Okay, but I mean, I don't know if that's like, it's like, I don't know if that's a direct quote, like allegedly she said that, whatever, right? So yeah, don't quote me directly on that, but
And,
it's the sort of thing that's in public consciousness, right? That like, these folks, these women are not incidental to the goings on, the decisions their husbands make and such, at all. But I mean, I suppose we should wrap up pretty soon. But one thing I did want to ask, and I mean, now this is beyond the scope of the film, and I guess a lot of the stuff we're talking about is beyond the scope of the film, which is fine. And I see where Emeka is coming from. Like, the film is still achieves a lot. So it's not praising it for that.
Sorry, Said,
But-
let me just chip this in before you take it away, wherever you want.
Okay, fine.
I think that the line of questioning that you and perhaps OAG are looking to chase or to tease out you'd find that you can pursue that with the relationship between Dewa's neighbor, who I think was his superior, and his very woke wife, who wanted to drink, smoke, have fun. Now, I think that if we're asking ourselves why a man, of his standing within the military will be pushed to go into a coup against a communist, so to speak, communist head of state, it would be because he enjoys the capitalist lifestyle. He enjoys the lavish life.
Right. He wants to gain power so that he and his wife can enjoy the soft life.
Yeah. I think that there's a thread there that can be, explored.
No, definitely. No, I agree with that. But look, to some extent, America, I would also argue, and I know we're about to leave the subject, but I would also argue that like the opposition between the virtuous wife who's fighting for her husband and the like quote woke
wife.
Okay.
The sort of immoral. I don't know why you're calling her woke. I don't know why you're calling her woke because she used to drink. Everyone used to drink in the 70s. But anyway, I guess and obviously the term woke is it's anachronistic to call people in the 70s woke, but we can have that debate separately. But you say at the blow grammar.
Please,
but,
what does that word that word that you just used now? What does it mean? Anachronistic.
No, but
anaconda.
My larger point being that the opposition between a virtuous woman, whose husband actually avoids the coup, and the immoral woman whose husband participates in the coup feels very Nollywood. That aspect, the opposition between like good woman, respectful, doesn't drink, goes home at night, goes to the movies and then goes home and relaxes, sleeps, doesn't like the loud music from her neighbors.
One that smokes.
Yeah.
I agree.
That opposition is kind of played out.
I don't disagree with you, but would it fit into the reality of the 70s at the time? Maybe. I don't know, but yeah. I take that.
No, that's fair. Possibly. Yeah. Possibly. No, that's fair. And I really buy what you're saying about the Civil War context. But anyway, I'm also conscious of the fact
that in itself is political. That in itself is political.
Yeah, that is. It is.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. I buy that. Like deciding to marry, outside of your ethnic group at that period in time. I buy that. But I'm also conscious of the fact that it's like three lads presuming to peer into the minds of women and assess their political and moral.
No, honestly,
so I don't know. Maybe that effort is doomed from the start. To some extent.
I'll take that as a very great critique or good critique of the movie. To be honest, if you ask me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Tenor.
Fair enough, but no. Tenor is he's resting. People from the 70s, man, they need their rest. What I wanted to say, as a way of maybe wrapping up, and I know I'm gonna open the Pandora's box here. But was Murtala a communist? Go.
By whose stretch of imagination was Murtala a communist? And this is, I think, this is what I hear sometimes. So there's this guy, I can't remember.
No, and I should say, sorry, by the way, I'm asking this question because, there are two kinds of constituencies that I want to respond to by asking this question. One is the people who are like, Nigeria is a communist country and it's always been, and what we need is more market, which is like all the tech bros in Lagos and everyone, nowadays who's like commenting on social media, it seems. So not everyone, but a large group of like the sort of Lagos bourgeoisie or whatever is often like, oh, because there's a lot of state regulation, it's like evidence that Nigeria is communist. So Murtala is like a classic example for them to be like, obviously this guy was communist. That's one. The other set of people who like might be sympathetic to that are some of the like younger, Emeka will call them Gen Z people online who, are coming to a kind of political awakening, and they're looking for examples of historical figures, particularly in Nigerian history, to latch onto. And Murtala seems a little more favorable than a lot of the other people. Of course, Abacha being like extreme example of like kleptocratic authoritarian, or Babangida, who put in place structural adjustment. So compared to those kinds of guys, Murtala seems like kind of all right? So then, I mean, why shouldn't we embrace him on the left as like, hardcore lefty, left is dad?
Oh, well,
What do you guys think?
to start with, I like the way that you framed the question. I mean, and that does well to guide the conversation. I think that it's important to note that Murtala had communist or socialist sympathies. I think that we should give him that much due. But having said that the way the Nigerian economy usually runs.
By the way, I might disagree, and I'd be interested in hearing.
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
I mean, that might not be the official take.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's fine, and but for me, I think it's the way the Nigerian economy has always been run. Especially by military rulers. It's always been in that sense. I mean, there are very many how they say that thing now, exceptions to the rule. I mean, I would almost swear my last copper that Obasanjo set the trend for the capitalist state that we have today. I mean, somewhere between Gowon, who had started that project, and Murtala, there were things that Murtala did that kind of frightened big capital.
Exactly.
So that's that for that. But with regards to the economy, so you always have this tendency, and that's where people always get it wrong. That Buhari, for instance, will go for a mixed economy. One that is a bit capitalist in that sense and welfareist in another sense. And then because it's the welfare bit that they want to push
trade that money,
for the talakawas and the urban poor and even the rural poor. The messaging then seems to be that we've had socialist governments, whereas that's not the case. But you can't blame people that much, even though I know that there are bad faith actors. But the truth of the matter is that people don't even understand. It's clear to me that people don't even understand what socialism is, really in the first place. So So maybe definitions will do in at times like this. What does one mean when one says that we're looking.
Yeah, fine. And Turner, if you were here, would be like, oh, Saeed, you can't say that. You can't tell us about what we'll have in a separate episode. But I think we're gonna have the Is Buhari a Socialist episode. So I mean, don't feel like you have to thrash that all out here. But I mean, just in terms of responding to the was Murtala a communist question, you're already shedding light on some of the contemporary ways in which people think about that question. But I want you to get into it. So was he? And you said no, so why not?
Oh, all right. So what I think is imperialism is a global system.
Exactly.
So imperialism is a global system, and it has sunk its tentacles around Africa, its colonies, and all that. So when you have someone that is trying to uproot one of the tentacles of imperialism, the person might be a nationalist and even help other nationalist movements, but still doesn't mean that person is a communist or socialist, because we look at your relationship with the working class, we look at what the means of production is and what you're trying to do with that. Maybe he had quite a short, too short a period of time on being in power for us to assess fully what his standing, was at that point in time. But what I'm trying to drive home is that you might be a nationalist, but not necessarily a socialist or communist. And then you see that with the wave of nationalism popping around Africa, the uprooting of direct colonialism and the seeing through the tricks of the imperialists, in terms of wanting to install puppet governments inside of Angola, and then being re-educated by Basil Davidson, because Basil Davidson, of course, captured and documented a lot of revolutionary movements around Africa. With Cabral, he was there at the war front, when he was trying to get the Portuguese off off Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau. So it was this man that came to tell Murtala, look, this is the side that you should be on. This is what you should do. Allow them to do this. Give them this support and all. So this will send shivers down the spine of imperialism, and then they might start suspecting that, this guy, it's only a matter of time before you become
OAG. OAG.
Yeah.
OAG.
Yeah.
I mean, quick.
Emeka, go ahead. What's going on? Go ahead, man.
I don't understand with OAG. I mean, OAG, the question I want to ask you is, I mean, would you say that? And I mean, yes. So Said has a problem with all these military socialists and communists, and I think I agree with him to a large extent. Would you say that Thomas Sankara was socialist or communist? And under what what metrics would you use to judge that? I mean, for me,
interesting question.
I'm trying to wrap my head around why the West, inspired by, or why a group of younger military officers would try and take out Murtala, under the directives of the CIA, if he wasn't doing something that they didn't quite like, if he wasn't going against their own interests. So, I wouldn't.
But wait a minute, Emeka, you're just saying that because the CIA killed him, that means he was.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying that he was a communist. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't even dare think it or say that he was socialist. But to say that he didn't have any of those sympathies, I think no, it's not.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I didn't say that. I don't think maybe you broke off. What I'm saying is that you might be a nationalist but not be a socialist. And of course, if you participate in helping to uproot imperialist tentacles, and if you are a factor that impedes on capitalist accumulation of the big, so that's what he was, or what he represented, and it was just only a matter of time. In fact, there was a letter that I don't remember who the president was at that point in time, the United States president, that was writing to him to come do something and all. He published that letter and told them never to write to, and the African leader like that anymore, that Africa is not in the orbit of the West. So when you start having rhetorics like that, then you are suspect. It's not even like my favorite political analyst says, when you start participating in any form of anti-imperialism, or you participate in any redistributive form of politics, or you look like someone like Allende in Chile. He wasn't an all-out, let's carry gun, and, he got there through voting, and they still killed him because
or even
changed
Lumumba.
The structure. So this is what even Lumumba, so that's what we're talking about. Imperialism, like Fanon said, imperialism is never hesitant in murdering people. It's never hesitant, So someone like Thomas Sankara is clearly like, that one's a Marxist, like he has dialectical materialism, all these kind of things, reads Lenin, like he can give you the front and back.
Okay. And I wanted to talk about this. I think this is where I want to go with the conversation about the left's view on Murtala in the 70s, and then this whole rheumatism question. But Emeka, please continue.
Yeah, I think that, I've come in touch or in contact with documents that suggest, I'm not saying that that's what it is, but suggests to me that the left had a rather lenient view of Murtala, maybe almost even sympathetic to him. I mean, there were student left groups in the 70s who were celebrating 1 year, 2 year, 3 year anniversary of his death up until late 70s. So I think that there's something there that we probably can't trash out now, that probably involve a little bit more research or reading. I don't know, but but I think that there was something about Murtala that resonated with the masses, maybe not across board, because I assure you that my brothers from the southeastern part of Nigeria don't want to hear about him.
Right.
But
right, because he committed atrocities in the southeast during the Civil War.
Oh
right?
in fact,
So fine. Turner,
but without throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I think that there's something about Murtala's short time as head of state
that made him dangerous to them, right?
Feel like you have to thrash that all out here. But I mean, just in terms of responding to the was Murtala a communist question? You're already shedding light on some of
maybe populist
contemporary ways in which people
something like that.
But I want you to get into it.
I don't think Murtala was nationalist.
And you said
I wouldn't
so
quite agree that Murtala was a nationalist in any real sense of that word. Maybe a populist, of some sorts. But except maybe I don't know what the definition of nationalist means. But
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think that that there's an argument that can be made to say that that maybe not all, but certain aspects of or certain parts of the left rather felt that on issues that had to do with the MPLA in Angola, that they could collaborate with him, and they found in him a willing partner, and that it was a question of the end rather than the means. It's the same argument that you could make for why certain members of the left were part of the political bureau, Babangida's political bureau in the 80s, and then when they
Emeka, go ahead. What's going on?
They
go ahead, man.
So I think that for the larger cause, I think if you found the head of state, the Nigerian head of state in your camp, what were you going to do actually? When it was about taking positions, but I'd say so. That'd be my call.
Yeah, I feel like he was quite different from
interesting question.
The normal crop. And then when you check out no siren, trying to be close to the people, that populist and I'd say nationalist kind of vibe that he had, he was different, no doubt about that, and then I wouldn't say it was a mistake on the part of the left, but maybe more orientation will have helped.
But wait a minute, Emeka, you're just saying that because the CIA killed him, that means he was a communist?
A bit more closer to him, because some aspects of the left called his government an unfinished revolution.
Okay.
If he had spent a longer time there, maybe we would have seen how he turned out to be. Like there are some people that don't have this consciousness, and then with time they keep on moving to positive direction where they've been exposed to much more, coherent analysis. Right. So we really can't say as such, but I think it's not too good to block off people that are showing prospects, I'd say. you know. So that's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mm,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. So they seen through that and then see that okay, it's probably a weakness that issue. Weakness, strength, depending on how you view it, you know, because that got him closer to the people and then to the enemies or the imperialists and the intra-class the
Yeah.
strugglers that want to hijack the government from him. You know, they saw it as a weakness. You know, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, or even Lumumba.
Mm,
Oh.
mm.
Okay. Yes, by the way, totally. And I wanted to talk about this. I think this is where I want to go with the conversation about the left's view
Go
on
see the
Murtala in the
movie
70s and
and
then
pick up
this whole
some books on
Ramatism question. But
communism,
Emeka, please
socialism.
continue.
Pick up Kwame Nkrumah's book on class struggle in Africa. He talked about the military, maybe in chapter 5 or 6. So it gives a better understanding of what was going on at that point in time. And of course, there are books in the library about the military proceedings and then Muritala's speeches and documents that you can check out in your local library. So it would be good to check those out. You know, maybe I might put the title in the link or something
Final comment, right?
or description.
So let me just toe, let me toe OAG's line and say that if you're going to see 76 and understand the historical context, background within which it was set, then I think that if you have the time and patience, that the book to read alongside watching the movie is Collier Motorshaw's Just Before Dawn.
Yeah.
It even goes all the way back to the Zikist movement to give an idea where how
right, because he committed atrocities
left,
in the Southeast during the Civil War, right? Like
starts his own starts to chart his own course. So I'd suggest that it's very helpful to read that book alongside see the movie. That's it for me.
Nice. Okay, some solid book recommendations to go out on. Once again, the scholars rule the day. But I guess overall, it sounds like the general consensus is that we want to recommend the film. So cool. I guess if there are no further interjections, I suppose we can wrap it up there. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good job.
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Nice. Okay. So
All
bye
right. Cheers, man.